All right. Well, welcome everybody. Glad to be here with you again. Taking a break and catching up with you on effort reporting, time and effort. This I would really was I was telling Naomi this will be a fun topic for me, and Chuck's laughing, I'm sure, because who would ever think effort reporting is a fun topic? But I say that a little bit with tongue in cheek because the only time, and this is the only time, I had the Department of Justice sitting across the table from me, giving me a grilling, was on the issue of time and effort. They take it serious. They don't want to see. There's no laughing with them. It's serious stuff, and it's important. We have to take it serious too. So being able to manage your time and effort is critical. And when it doesn't look like you're doing it right, it catches attention. And you know what? The way they talk about it as fraud, straight up. If you're not managing, in particular, a federal contract or a grant appropriately, then they think you're defrauding the United States government. So it's never fun when they come in with that attitude and put that on the table. So we like to take care of this and do it right and do it carefully. And so it's sort of a big deal. All kinds of nuances to it. Even today, we were getting questions independent of this, questions about graduate students and time and effort. And in fact, that Department of Justice query that I had so fun to endure was all about graduate students' time and effort. And the issue was there were three distinct grants, and the PI was being asked directly, how are you, Dr. So-and-so, knowledgeable about how that graduate student worked on different grants? And I don't think I've ever seen a faculty member squirm so much as she did in that. Anyways, with that introduction, we have a world's expert on this, Chuck Tarantino. And Chuck, as you know, heads up our Grants and Contracts Administration. So because it's GCA, Grants and Contracts Administration, they're the ones responsible for ensuring that we indeed administer these grants correctly. So Chuck, the pitch is to you, and we're going to have fun learning with you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Uh, I thought at first I'd just give you a little bit of background about effort reporting. A lot of people look at it as a very cumbersome process and they want to know, why do we have to do this? And so it's also helpful to know where it came from and what we could have had instead of effort reporting. After World War II, the partnership between the federal government and the university in terms of research greatly increased. And as Mark said, the federal government takes it very seriously when you spend their money. And they approached the universities and said, look, we want your faculty and staff to do the same thing our employees do at the federal government. And at the federal government, and I'm a former federal employee, I can tell you they track their time in 15-minute increments. And I can promise you, every couple of weeks, I really had to sit down and do a lot of bookkeeping to try to figure out what exactly I had done in 15-minute increments over that prior 2 weeks. And of course, universities pushed back and said, wait a minute, we're not a corporation or a manufacturer. We're a very different kind of business. We're in the business of instructing as well as doing research. And after a lot of back and forth, the federal government had to really agree that, look, yes, we do understand that instruction and research are inextricably intermingled, which was a good or a big win for universities. So then they had to say, okay, so we're not going to make you do these cumbersome timesheets, and actually the compromise is what we call effort reporting. And we do that, and we'll get into it as we get into the presentation several times a year. But honest to goodness, it sure beats having to do this and tracking every 15-minute increment of what we do. So with that, we'll get started. Effort reporting is a process mandated by the federal government to verify that direct labor charges to or costs shared on sponsored projects, teaching, instruction, service, or other duties are accurate. Again, it goes back to what Mark said. They want some kind of affirmation that what we got paid for is what we really did. So what is effort? Effort is the portion of time expressed as a percentage of an employee's total time spent on university's activities. And basically effort reporting is used to confirm that, as I just said, the salaries and wages to each sponsored agreement are reasonable in relation to the work. Fortunately, the word is reasonable, not to the minute or to the 15-minute increment. Effort is the amount of time spent on working on professional activities that occur here at the university, such as research, teaching, administration, clinical activity, and service. And committed effort is the proportion of effort which we have explicitly proposed and devoted to that sponsored activity. So when you prepare your proposal and you put down a percentage of time that you're going to be working on a project, you know, the federal government is expecting some reasonable approximation of that time. And what's interesting is that all those activities must total 100%, even if your appointment is less than 1 FTE. And what does that mean? But we're going to get into that, and I'm going to give you an example in a little bit. But first, I want to give you some more foundation.
Hey, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
Mark here. Let's underscore that. I want to be crystal clear. The federal government, and in fact, all entities, believe no matter how hard you work, there's only 100% of you. There's never 120% of you. There's just 100% of you. And that is so hard to get across, particularly for some of my colleagues that work weekends, and they said, but Mark, that doesn't make sense. I said, they do not think about a 40-hour week. All they say is, your world is 100%. Now, what are you going to give me, the federal government? And it's just really that black and white. So it doesn't make sense to a lot of folks, and I know, but that is the reality of that. And actually, if you think about it, guys, there's only you. I mean, there is 100% of you, and that might be many, many hours beyond a normal work week, but it's still just 100% of you. Sorry, Chuck, I just wanted to underscore that.
It's a good point, Mark, because, you know, and I've had faculty talk to me and say, Chuck, wait a minute, I gave the university my 40 hours.
Yeah.
This is my time. Yeah. And the answer is, actually, no, it's not. Right. You know, the university owns all our time. Yeah. You know, if you come up with a brilliant idea, you know, sitting at home in dinner, that idea belongs to the university if it's related to your research. You know, so it's not something that you can, you know, componentize into a 40-hour week. And so we will get into that a little bit more. But let's talk about what, and so, but it's also based upon your salary. You know, what does this effort represent in terms of your salary? Because we get paid for many different things here at the university. So what we want to talk about first is, what is our institutional base salary? This is the salary that we're going to look at to create that percentage. And it's, you know, it's defined as the annual compensation paid by the university based upon that individual's appointment. You know, whether that time is spent on research, instruction, administration, or any other related activities. And that's great, but, you know, what isn't included in that base salary? Well, things like bonuses, task payments, incentive compensation, summer supplemental pay for faculty who have 9-month appointments, any kind of augmentation, supplemental compensation that might be paid out temporarily if you were, you know, maybe filling in temporarily in a chair position, that really do fall outside of your regular roles and responsibilities and your appointment. Overload teaching is not a part of base salary. Reimbursed expenditures, for example, for travel or something like that, obviously that's not salary. And any income that is earned by an employee outside of their UNT employment. And, you know, faculty can go out and consult one day a week, and that is not considered a part of your university base salary.
Hey, Chuck, just real quick, do we want to get a poll from the audience of who's actually certified?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. There we go. So we just wanted to get a sense in terms of our audience, you know, how familiar you are with effort reports. And right now it's looking like 3/4 of you have never done one, and that's okay. That's great. Thank you, Naomi, for bringing that question up.
Sure thing.
So who is subject to effort reporting? You know, any individual who's providing some kind of effort and getting paid from a sponsored activity. And even those who are cost shared. If in your proposal, you commit some of your time or some other individual's time that are paid from institutional funds, but it's clearly stated in the proposal, quantified, then we need to actually document that effort too, because the federal government considers that part of basically our contractual agreement, that we are also going to contribute to these projects, and they want to make sure that any effort that we said we would match or cost share has actually been certified as well. And so for UNT, the following individuals are really subject to effort reporting. Obviously, faculty and staff, graduate students, and postdocs. Now, the hourly people, the undergraduate students, they're paid biweekly. So they're filling out timesheets. And from the federal government perspective, you know, that's acceptable documentation. So that is their certification of effort. And so they're not included in the electronic effort reporting process that we do here.
But to that point, Chuck, we have to do this one because we agreed not to do timesheets.
Correct.
You know, that could have been our other world, but instead we have this flexible time and effort reporting.
Right. And, you know, here at UNT, we do it 3 times a year, and that sure beats having to do it, like I said, regularly. So, you know, I just wanted to show an example of a full-time FTE and a part-time FTE so that you all could see. Now, here we have Mary Jones, who's full-time, a full-time faculty member. She spends 25 hours teaching, and then 15 hours doing sponsored research, and then 10 hours actually doing administrative tasks. So that totals up to 50 hours. And so, you know, the question becomes, what is the percentage of effort for each one of those activities? So again, as Mark said, you do not use 40 hours. It's whatever hours you happen to work during that period. And again, it's not exact. It's a reasonable estimate. And that's the good news. It's a reasonable estimate. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So here we have a 50-hour total. So what is the percentage of instruction? Well, you've got 25 hours out of a total of 50. So, you know, your percentage effort in this instance is really 50% instruction. So here we have 15 hours of sponsored research. So you got 15 divided by 50, that's 30%. And then 10 hours of administration over 50, 20%. So, you know, again, you're looking holistically at the actual hours worked. So what about someone who's half-time? Let's go there. We have a part-time FTE. Mary's now gone part-time, and so we have 10 hours of instruction, 8 hours of sponsored research, and 2 hours of administration for a half-time FTE. So, you know, are you looking at 50%? No, it's got to add up to 100%. So again, we're going to look at instruction, and we're going to say, you know, it's 10 hours over 20. So Mary's spending 50% of her effort on instruction. 8 hours on sponsored research out of 20, 40% doing research. And then finally, 10% of administration. So again, the percentage of effort is based upon the number of hours you're actually contributing. If you're part-time, you've only got 20 hours to contribute. That is considered your 100% effort. Okay, where can effort reports be accessed here at the university? Right now, we have our own system. It's online and it's available in EIS PeopleSoft. And our online effort report certification is integrating with other existing enterprise systems such as payroll so that they can gather that required information and create that percentage. And here you go. When is effort certified? Effort is certified each semester for all employees on an externally sponsored agreement. So we have fall, which is September through December, and that's done in February. We have spring, which is January through May, which is done in June. And right now in September, we are going to certify our summer reporting period. Now, when Mark came here, you know, he and I talked about the effort reporting period, and we have both worked at other universities with different requirements for reporting. And Mark had come from a university that required it only annual. And there were really some benefits to that, because then you really get to look holistically at the entire year. And Mark and I are both really committed to looking at potentially changing this period from 3 times a year of certifying to once a year. And our current goal, and this is a goal now, you know, but you know, we are trying to make things better and easier for faculty, is hopefully we will be able to do that annual certification starting in fiscal year 2022.
So we certify once a year, but we would manage it very closely within a regular, you know, even a monthly period. You know, you'd manage it. The important thing that Chuck's talking about is creating that flexibility of a full year to end at the end of the year with maximum flexibility, make sure you hit everything right.
And to elaborate on that, Mark, what we are looking at doing, as a lot of other universities who've gone to this annual reporting, is we're looking for building a reporting process that would automatically provide reports to the faculty quarterly, showing what the effort is, and would require you to go in and look and see what actually is going on your sponsored activity. It would not be a certification, but it would be a chance for you to go in and make sure that the effort that's currently there is consistent with what is happening on your project. And again, we'll talk about what if it's not consistent in a few minutes. So in September, those of you that have grants that have payroll activity or effort on your projects, or even cost sharing only, you will get this email. And this is an automatically generated email letting you know that there is an effort report waiting for your certification. Now, if you look at this click here, there's I think you can see, I hope you can see this arrow. It tells you what semester it's for in the period. The good news is all you have to do is click on this and it takes you right to that effort report. If you have any, and then it also gives you the navigation down below that if you need that. And all this is sent to you in your inbox, which is really nice. Much better than some of the things I've had at my other universities. And then here, if you have any questions or need additional information, you can always contact Sally Pettyjohn. She would love to talk to you, and you've got her email address here. And so that is the initial step in letting you know there's an effort report to be certified. And here is a sample of an effort report. And you know, it's got some of the basic information, the certification period, and the employee ID who's certifying, the project ID, the project title, your department, and your description. And then it's got instructions, and then it will list, the personnel who are on the grant. And in this case, we have 3 employees. We have Michael Smith, Alice Anderson, and Dr. Wong. And only one of them is 50%, is Dr. Wong. And so 50% of Dr. Wong's time is actually contributing to the grant. And you'll see there's an other sponsored or other sources column. And those are all the other activities that we talked about, whether it's instruction, administrative, anything other than that sponsored project activity. There's also another column that gives you cost sharing information. And just to let you know, we are also working on an even better cost sharing process that will actually include cost sharing in the future in your Grants Work Center. So you can go into that Grants Work Center and not only look at your current projects, because all of them will be there with the different categories and the different expenditures, encumbrances, and free balances. You will also have access to what you budgeted for cost sharing, what's been encumbered and expended for that, so that you can really look holistically at your whole project. And that's something we're just beginning to work on here at UNT. And we're even meeting on that with Health Science Center next week, because they kind of blazed the trail on that, and we want to see what they've learned, because they're just really basically finishing their implementation. And what I do want to point out down below is this certification statement. I certify that the above salary distributions represent an accurate accounting of an effort expended on this project during this period. Now, this is serious. This is a legal certification. And that's why when the feds come in and audit us, one of the first things the auditors ask for, pull out the effort reports on these projects. We want to see them. Because you are signing, when you sign this effort report, you are legally certifying that, you know, this is correct. And so I want faculty to understand that this is a very important thing that you're signing. And it has a lot of legal ramifications, as Mark shared with us in his specific example. Fortunately, I've never had that experience with my faculty at my other institutions, but it's real, and I appreciate Mark sharing that.
Oh, stop bragging, come on.
Changes in efforts. So you know, as we said, research and instruction are, and this is the federal term that they actually put in their circular and now in uniform guidance, it's inextricably intermingled. So they know you can't give the exact number of hours. What if you're teaching a grad student, you know, on research methodologies or training them on methodologies to do research? That's still research. So there's an instruction component and research, and so they understand there, you know, that they can sometimes be both. So in our policy, and I'm going to show you where it is before we get out of here, we have a new effort reporting policy out in the policy office in the policy manual, and it's in chapter 13, and it's effort reporting, chapter 13, effort reporting, it's number 15. So there is a lot of detail in there that I'm not going to go into in this, you know, fairly high level workshop that really gives you a lot of good information on what effort reporting is, how to do it. But what I want you to know is that this is an estimate. So when at the beginning of the semester, you might say, well, you know, John Doe is going to work 20% effort, but at the end of the semester, well, no, John may have either worked 15 or maybe 25%. If it's really 5% more than that estimate, then we're asking you to go in and actually change it in the payroll system. But there is that flexibility. So, oh my goodness, if you put 15% and John works 16%, you don't have to go back to payroll. There is a tolerance in there, but again, because it's an estimate, and the feds have accepted that. So here's an example. A report indicates an employee works 75% on instructional activities, and in this case, and 25% on a grant, but in actuality, it was 50-50. Therefore, really, you need to not only adjust the effort report, but you also need to change the payroll behind it, because this person was overpaid institutionally and not paid enough off of the grant because they provided a lot more activity. So to make that change, if you realize that when you look at the auto-generated effort report, you need to contact Sally Pettyjohn at the email below, and she will work with you to create that adjusted payroll or effort report. But you also to work with your departmental administrator to get an EPAR in to change the effort for that period of time. Finally, what happens if we don't complete the certification? Well, you know, they've got to be based on records that accurately reflect the work performed. If we really don't complete those effort reports, you know, and Mark can assure you, and I can assure you, there will be a disallowance of any salary that was charged to that grant. It doesn't matter that really they worked that effort. If we don't do that effort report to the feds, it's not really effort contributed to the project. Regardless of any support we can provide, they're going to disallow the costs. So we don't want that to happen. So it's critical that we do these reports timely and every time. And you know, audits are you know, primarily focused on salary and wages. Why? Because those are usually 70 to 80% of what we're charging to our grants. They're one of the largest types of costs that we actually incur. Okay. So again, you know, the feds are just wanting to make sure that whatever they paid for they have some kind of affirmation that what they pay for is what they really got. That's really it in plain English. There are a lot of resources, and I'm really pleased to say that, our whole division, and I mean everyone in our division, from Mark and Pam, Dr. Pam Padilla, Naomi, and all the VPs, directors, and staff, everyone were pulled together to really update our PI handbook. There's going to be a lot more coming, but it's no longer that little PDF that you guys, those of you who've been here a while, got used to looking at. This is an electronic document that Naomi Wood put together for us. That will be updated regularly as we want to change it, because each section really kind of stands on its own. So regardless of whether you want to go in there to look for effort reporting, there is so much information in there. If you haven't looked at it recently, go out there and look at it. And of course, then there's our areas portion of the VPRI website, and that's got a lot of information about not just effort reporting, but a lot of different things that we do in our office, pre-award and post-award. And now we have new online PI training. For those of you who have been here, you're used to seeing a PDF document that you just scroll through. Well, this year we have moved all our training, and we've actually expanded upon it. Research integrity and compliance and research commercial agreements really now have created their own modules. So it's much more comprehensive, and it's in Bridge, so it's much more user-friendly. And with Bridge, like the other Bridge trainings you've taken, there are tests that are now there for you to take to hopefully help you ensure that you understood what the information was telling you. And then finally, again, the UNT policy manual, which is out there. If you go to the policy office, to the policy manual, and then to chapter 13, which is for research. And there are nine research policies that I put out there relating to my area, GCA. Some of them are revised, most of them are new. So a lot of good information out there, cost transfers, cost sharing. I strongly urge you to take a look at them. We are going to be doing regular sessions with the administrators and going into more detail about those policies. So with that, we go to Q&A. Now it's your turn to turn the table on us and ask your questions.
One of the things you mentioned, Chuck, was compensation on grants beyond the normal. It's something I call extra service compensation. And it's interesting because, if you do have a principal investigator that wishes to pay wages, salary above their normal 100%, there is only a very, very limited situation where the feds will allow that to happen. And by the way, you must apply this to all source of dollars. And that's in the case of a grant needing an external consultant to serve on the grant. And by that, they mean someone outside the field. So say you're in the field of my own field of food science, and I needed someone over in agronomy to consult with me. I could pay that person, but only if the sponsor pre-approved and the institution pre-approved. Both those pre-approvals have to be in place before you would be allowed to do a consulting like that. So
right, and the feds would want some assurance that that truly is outside that person's regular duties.
Yeah, and that responsibility fell on me as VPR to assure and approve that. And so you had to be sure that it truly was outside the normalcy of the discipline.
And because otherwise, if it really was a part of that faculty member's regular workload, the way you should be paying them in that situation would actually be to put a percentage of their salary and effort on the project itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just a nuance, an interesting nuance.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah. So the example I gave early on about the Department of Justice, that's an interesting one, because if you listen to me, I was saying it was about graduate students that were being paid on multiple grants. And it was the multiple grants that got the attention that said, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. I'm not sure we, the federal government, are getting our dollars worth. So the more complexity you have in terms of sources of dollars like that, the more you have to be on top of tracking and being careful. Even having a principal investigator having their own, tracking of who was working on what when. At the level of detail, they could be confident to assure that we understood what time and effort was being placed on what grant.
And one of the things maybe we should share, what are the kind of things that the feds look at when they come in? If you're really trying to document that or support that what you put down was reasonable. I have known of situations where they will ask for lab books, or
Yes.
where they'll ask, well, show us the email interactions that you're having with this person,
Yes.
show that y'all are working together. So you might want to be thinking about those things too as you're working in your lab, because there will be documentation that should support, the effort of these individuals that are working on these projects. Any other questions or comments? Or this may be a short session.
The quiet one. So we'll leave you with something to think about, and that is we are looking at new software systems, and this is a good system we have. It's homegrown design, but it is possible in the future we may be shifting. So hang with us. It'll be a new day for all of us if we do that.
Actually, Chuck, I had a question for you.
Hey.
Sure.
Can you describe what the penalties are, both for the faculty as well as the institution, if someone was to try to go above the threshold?
What do you mean above the threshold, Mike?
Well, you can't go above 100% or
Right. Well, you can't go above 100%.
95%.
Yeah, you can't go. Oh, you're talking about 95% in terms of summer salary?
Right. And what are the penalties to either both the individual as well as the institution? Because it's good to know that it's, is it just a UNT penalty, or is it a penalty to both the institution as well as the PI?
Right. Well, okay. Right. So that's a good point, Mike. When the feds have an audit finding, say they find, one particular or several grants where there are where the effort is not reported correctly and they disallow it, I'm trying to think of the right way. Is it interpolate or there's a word for it where they say, okay, so if we looked at, $100,000 worth of salary and 5,000 of that 100,000 was unallowable, they're going to say that if the actual total salary was $1 million for the whole institution or for sponsored projects was $1 million, they're going to say, well, then it's maybe that 50,000. I'm not doing my math here because I didn't think about this, but basically the same percentage of that $1 million would be applied, and they would interpolate that the whole institution had 5% of their salaries that were not allowable. So it makes the penalty, even though it might seem like it's just for a few grants, much broader and across the entire university. Is that where you were going with that, Mike?
Maybe I can help a little bit there, Chuck, because it is hard to predict what a penalty might be. If a auditor, were to find a problem, they could also be asking the question, well, did you intentionally do something here? And if you were intentionally do something that's bad, then again, when you're charging salary when work wasn't done, or you're somehow trying to fudge that, it's called fraud.
Fraud, yeah.
and fraud means you're criminally charged.
Right.
You then have the opportunity to go to jail and enjoy that experience. The other thing that can happen is, even if they don't go that far, they can say this was mismanaged, and you will not be allowed to submit a National Science Foundation grant for the entire university for the next year. or
Right.
2 years or whatever. So there are all range of sanctions, Mike, that they can slap on you, everything from personal criminal charges on through to very hefty indirect fines. Believe me, if we could not submit a National Science Foundation for a year, you talk about a royal hurt. Oh my Lord! Everyone in this university would know your name.
And the word that I was looking for was extrapolates. They can extrapolate that finding across the entire salary for the university. And so that could make a very, what seems like a smaller disallowance, much larger. And then the other penalty too, Mark, is if they feel that there's been inappropriate behavior, they can triple the finding to the university.
Yeah, it's not a good scene. So we want to manage time and effort well. We want to be honest and careful and understand that our principal investigators and all the researchers only have 100% of themselves to give, no matter how many hours that might be. And of course, Chuck was mentioning Sally, and she is an expert. But the thing is, if any of you feel like you're in a funky situation where you're trying to do the right thing and you're just trying to get it across to someone, don't hesitate to call. We'll help you make that case and draw some clarity. Or if you want to sort of stand back and say, hey, let's ask the experts, and we'll come in as the experts and help you work through, or help your faculty work through a solution there. So
Right. And I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
well, Naomi, no,
Sure.
another fun one.
Yeah,
A
truly.
little quieter, but that's okay, guys. We hope this was a good introduction, and at least you know some folks to reach out to when you're scratching your head trying to understand something.
Yes.
Time and effort.
And we appreciate all the research administrators on the call learning more about best practices and how to communicate these things to your PIs, because you are the conduits of information. So we're glad we could at least share with all of you today. And we have recorded this and we'll post it for any faculty member who wants this information. But join us in October. We're going to be talking more about broader impacts and what that means, and how your research project can benefit society and advance desired societal outcomes. So join us. Pam Padilla and Warren Berggren are going to be sharing their expertise, their wisdom, along with several other PIs who've got some great examples. And 2 weeks after that, join us for how to reach out to a program manager, how to build a sustainable relationship with funding project managers. So it'll be a great October for some professional development. So join us, and we're glad you all could be with us today.